Okay, so with this one, you're missing some variables, so you have to be a little careful in how you write the augmented matrix for this. So what you would have is you would have your x, your y, your z, and then your number. And so for the first equation, you would have 1, 1, 0, 2. And again, we'll put a 0 there because we don't have the z variable. For the second equation, we have x is 1, y is missing, and then z is 1, and then the number. And then for the third equation, x is missing, and then your y is -1, z is -1, and then your number of -3. Okay, now what we could do is we could go through systematically and get our leading one and then the zeros above and below it. So we'll do that very quickly here. So we'll start with row 1, has the leading 1. Then row 2, you need a 0 there. So you're going to take row 2 minus row 1. So that's going to give you 1, 0, 1, 1, and then subtract row 1, which is going to be -1, -1, 0, -2. Okay, so this is now our new row 2. And you'll notice row 3 also has the 0, so that is good. And so we'll put this together as 1, 1, 0, 2, 0, -1, 1, -1, and then row 3 just stays as it was. Okay, so now we focus on row 2 and we want to get a leading 1 there. And to get a leading 1 for row 2, you basically need to multiply or divide by -1. And that's going to change all of the signs. So what I could do is I could just write this as a plus, negative, plus sign. Okay, so now I have the leading 1. Now I'm going to focus on getting a 0 above and below it. So if I start with row 1, and we need to get this to become a 0. So I would take row 1 and subtract that from row 2, because I would have 1 minus 1 to get the 0. So this would be 1, 1, 0, 2, and then 0, -1, and again, we're going to be subtracting, so we're going to change the sign. So -1, +1, -1. So that gives us 1, 0, 1, 1 as our new row 1. And then we'll have to do a similar process for row 3, because row 3 has a -1, and so there you're just going to have to add row 3 to row 2. So row 3 will be 0, -1, -1, -3, and then you'll add that to row 2. So 0, 1, -1, and 1. So you'll see that those cancel, 0, 0, -2, -2, and that is your new row 3. Okay. So we'll put those together. So row 1 is now going to be this guy. So 1, 0, 1, 1. Row 2 is 0, 1, -1, 1. And then row 3 is 0, 0, -2, -2. Okay, so now we have to focus on getting row 3 complete. So for row 3, we will need to take row 3 and divide that by -2. So we'll have 0, 0, -2, -2, and divide all 4 of those numbers by -2 to get 0, 0, 1, 1 as your new row 3. Now, for reference, I always like to write down that new matrix. So row 3 now added to this matrix, you'll have 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, -1, 1, and then row 3, 0, 0, 1, 1. And now that you have a leading 1 in row 3, you can focus on getting the 0 in row 2. So you'll take row 2 and add that to row 3. So you'll have 0, 1, -1, 1, and then add to row 3 to get 0, 1, 0, 2. So this is your new row 2. And then the same process for row 1, you will need to have, starting with row 1, you will subtract that from row 3 to get the 0. So row 1 is going to look like 1, 0, 1, 1, and then row 3, 0, 0, -1, -1. So that gives you 1, 0, 0, 0. A lot of arithmetic here, and then that is your new row 1. So putting this together, you are looking at new row 1 of 1, 0, 0, 0, row 2, 0, 1, 0, 2, and then row 3 from the beginning, 0, 0, 1, 1. And I should say from the beginning of that particular row reduced step. All right, so this tells you in this last column that you're looking at a solution of 0, 2, 1 as your x, y, and z.